On this episode of the Multi-Amory Podcast, we're talking about self-esteem.
You mean that participation trophy bullshit?
Oh, heck no.
Heck no.
So what are we talking about then?
We're talking about self-esteem in how it actually can be helpful in your life and isn't just rewarding you for showing up.
Right, which is very different from, I think, the self-esteem that we were fed as millennial kids of the 90s.
I wonder if that's changing now. I think, people realize that just telling your kid constantly, you're the best thing that's ever happened on this planet is maybe not the best thing ever.
Well, I know there has been
setting himself up for expectations that are not going to be met.
Yeah, well, there has been some change in the way that the school systems, at least, are employing self-esteem education. Because research has shown, just trying to boost self-esteem, period, just giving people rewards for showing up and anything is actually not effective, has not been linked to better achievement, has not been linked to better grades, none of that. So it has started changing where it's now oh, whoops, we maybe missed that one a little bit.
God, yeah.
And I was actually reading an interesting article about it, talking about that it isn't that self-esteem itself is not important, but it's that some research was done on it, and the school system was and parenting, sort of pop parenting advice was we're just going to run with this before the research had time to catch up with actually how are the best ways to teach self-esteem.
Oh, interesting.
How do you teach healthy self-esteem? It's not so simple as just saying,
just kind of artificially inflating,
giving trophies for everything and
Yeah.
not making any difference between the feedback you get for when you do something well versus when you don't. So anyway, just that it kind of got ahead of actual research about how to do it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So why are we talking about this today? Well, I think it's interesting because I just got back from my best friend's baby shower, a friend that was very close to me all through high school and college, and we've still remained close to this day, about 15-year friendship. But she is having a baby, so I went to her baby shower, and she just...
I hope she's not throwing a baby shower when she's not having a baby.
No. She is having a baby, and therefore a baby shower. But also, she just finished her residency and got her, dream job as a doctor, and is married, has a home, all of these kind of milestone things that people look at, and they're ooh, okay, this means that this person is uber successful. You can measure their success in a variety of ways. And it's difficult, I think, to not compare yourself to that and be well, I don't own a home. I'm not having a baby. I'm not married. Things like that. And
the normal hallmarks of
exactly
what we've been told is success.
Yeah, which we've obviously talked about a lot on this show and the relationship escalator and stuff like that. But I think that there is that idea that if you're not successful, then therefore you're not worthy, or you might have lower self-esteem. There's definitely been times where I'm wow, I'm an unsuccessful person, or I'm worthless in a way, just because I'm not where some of my other friends are in their lives.
Right.
Have there been moments like that in both of your lives?
Oh my goodness, the whole comparison train fueled by social media especially is just really a bear. I mean, I've definitely had interesting times recently, particularly since publishing my book, actually, where I have a couple of other friends who are authors, and it's this weird mix of if they have a particular success, I don't know, I'm blanking on
getting to certain charts on
getting
Amazon
to
or
certain
something,
charts or getting an interview in a particular medium, or even honestly getting their audiobook produced
before yours,
earlier than mine. Where it would be a mix of feeling really happy for them, I guess maybe even compersive for them, one might say, feeling really happy for them because I can relate to wanting that kind of success, but then also feeling kind of jealous and envious, being I wish I had that, I wish I could get that. And then the third part of it being a self-worth thing of I'm a terrible author, I'm not worthy of this, I haven't gotten this because I must be bad, or no one cares about the stuff that I do, or yada yada yada. And I mean, for me, I've recently tried to take out that self-worth bit and like acknowledge, like I can feel the jealousy, I can feel the compersion, like that's totally fine to feel those two things together. But if I can try to not let it dictate a story about me, that'll probably be better for me. But that's my ongoing journey and challenge right now. What about you, Jace?
Yeah, I think for me, so we'll get into this a little bit more in a bit, but one of the troubles with having lower self-esteem is having a hard time handling criticism, of it kind of hitting you a lot harder and having kind of meaning about your self-worth, kind of like you were talking about, that it's not just a criticism of a specific thing, it's more like, this is about me as a person. And I know that that's something, and it varies from time to time, and later on we're going to talk about some of the tools and ways you can keep yourself on like the higher side of self-esteem. But for me, there's definitely times where getting some sort of criticism, either about like my work doing visual effects or about this podcast or about something I've written, is like really crushing.
Yeah.
Versus other times where it's like, dang, still don't love it, but it's not quite so
personal.
Yeah, like it doesn't quite send me so much into the like, what am I doing? I should just quit. Like this is.
It doesn't quite define you as much.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So I definitely noticed those extremes show up in my life.
Got it.
Yeah.
So can we talk about some terms?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want to start us off with the one?
Yeah, so what we're talking about right now is self-esteem. So this is defined as the positive or negative evaluation of the self. So it can be specific, like I'm a good communicator and I am proud of that, or it can be general, I'm a bad person and nobody likes me. It's usually described as a trait, which is relatively consistent throughout life, but it is possible to change. So like, I think I'm a nice person and people tend to like me, kind of thing.
Yeah, well, this was interesting, like within psychological research, calling something a trait, that in itself is like, kind of like the debate with the attachment styles. Like, is it a trait or is it something else? Because if it's a trait, that kind of means it's more like inherent in you and you are just one thing and that's what you are your whole life. So self-esteem is generally referred to as a trait, where it tends to get set kind of earlier in life, like attachment styles, and you tend to be kind of consistently there.
Yeah.
However, it is possible to change it and to sort of affect the way that you fluctuate up and down around that range. So it's not something you're totally stuck with. But I thought that term was interesting, like that I didn't realize trait was so specific in psychological literature.
Yeah. So that's in contrast to self-worth. Sometimes those terms are used interchangeably, but self-worth is sometimes used to describe the more general aspect of self-esteem. So as in about like your value as a person, like what your value is on this earth in this life, rather than tied to specific skills like, I'm good at communication or I'm good at this or I'm bad at that or whatever.
Interesting. Yeah. No, for sure.
And then we also wanted to make a comparison and a contrast to confidence.
Or self-confidence?
Or self-confidence, yeah. So it's obviously related to self-esteem, but it's not quite the same. Right, so confidence is about your belief in your ability to do something. It's a little bit different than just sort of what you think of yourself as a person or what you think of your skill level. And confidence is interesting because it's something like a lot of these things that you actually want to have a balance of. Like there's a lot of people who are like, I just wish I was confident all the time. And the way it was explained to me once was, sure, but if you were ultimately confident all the time about everything, you'd be like, oh, absolutely, I could go ride a bull with no training because I'm so confident that I can do anything, and then you die, right?
Let me just attest, as a woman who for a long time thought she was attracted to men who are confident all the time.
Not a good.
Attractive
just
at first.
Arrogance.
It's attractive at first, but it's really not great if you're confident all the time.
Right.
You need some variation in there.
Yeah. So it's kind of about finding that balance.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So when we were looking into self-esteem for this episode, there was a study that was sort of a review of various other studies done in 2004 that showed that a broad review of the correlates of self-esteem. That means like when self-esteem is high, these other things have also been found to be high. They